just heard was a completely raw DI guitar and bass transformed into a massive mix using exactly one multi-effects plugin. Today we're taking a look into MONOLYTH by prod.shadow. I've got 3 entirely different beats made from scratch, including some darkwave, post-punk, and industrial type of sounds. And I'm going to show you exactly how I use MONOLYTH to process every element in these mixes to get that gritty analog sound. Before we get started, I just wanted to make it clear that this is not a sponsored video, and prod.shadow is aware that I am making this, but all opinions will be my own. prod.shadow did reach out to me to give me a copy of MONOLYTH to test, and they also gave me a discount code for you guys, which I've left that in the link below if you want to go check it out. So let's open MONOLYTH here for the first time, and you can see there's a ton of effects to explore. First of all, it's got over 600 presets, which is crazy. It's got everything for guitars, bass, synth, drums, and even vocals, which I haven't actually been able to use yet, but I'm excited to try later. So let's take a quick glance at what's inside MONOLYTH. First things first, we got our preamp section, which has a ton of different guitar sim options. We have our mod section next, which has things like chorus and vibrato, etc. Delay over here, again with a couple different options. And moving on to reverb here, you can see there's different types of modes you can set it to. And a filter section down here, which has a variety of different synth filters, low pass, high pass, band pass, etc. This crush section is kind of like different types of distortion, soft clipping, and just weird stuff in general, which I think is kind of neat. This pump section over here is for side chaining and gating. And then we have a compressor setting as well over here with some pretty basic knobs. And down here are kind of your macro options, including a denoiser, high pass, low pass, a width knob, an age. And then what I find really cool is down here in the era section, you can kind of preset the mode to a different type of era, including 80s, 90s, 2000s, and etc. There's also options to turn off and turn on the noise. So if we want to make our tracks a little bit more noisy with like that tape kind of hum, there's a option to turn that on or off. And up here, there's a variety of different instrument modes, which you can switch over depending on what you're working with. And on top of all that, there's this section called Forge here, which is kind of a generative preset option, which I haven't really dug too much in, but it seems like a cool option to have just to get some more ideas that aren't already included in the initial presets. So one of my favorite ways to use MONOLYTH so far is on my guitars and basses, and I'll go ahead and show you what I have here. First of all, I wrote this track from scratch, including the guitar and bass parts. Nothing else has been added except MONOLYTH and a little bit of side chaining. Everything else in this session, by the way, is completely stock except for MONOLYTH. So I opened up MONOLYTH and I found this one preset, and I'll let you hear how this sounds on my bass. And instantly, that's like exactly the type of sound I wanted to go for in this track. And just for a before and after demo, let me turn this off just so you guys can hear what that sounds like dry. And that's a pretty big difference in my opinion, and just works great for the type of sound I'm going for. So let me show you my guitar tracks next. I have 2 different leads here, both using a few different settings. This dead VHS preset was one I really liked, so let me show you how this sounds now that MONOLYTH is on. And yeah, that already sounds crazy with just this one preset on. So again, let me give you a before and after reference to hear those 2 guitar tracks with, and I'll turn MONOLYTH off. So for the next section in this track, I added these chords, and again I used the same dead VHS preset, which I thought was just really good all around, and I'll show you how these sound here as well. So I have these two takes of chords panned both left and right, and let me show you how those sound without Monolith on. Right, and that's a huge difference, and if I'm being honest, I'm not the best guitar player out there, but I do think that this plugin is doing a lot of heavy lifting, and I really appreciate that. So next in this beat, I added the synth lead from a one-shot that I made, and I want to show you how Monolith sounds with this preset that I found. And you can see that it's now switched to synth mode instead of guitar. That way I can kind of process that instrument better. And I also kind of have this pump feature on with this gating effect, so it's kind of giving a little bit of like a rhythmic feel to it. And again, for reference, I'll just show you how the synth sounds without Monolith on. So now that we took a look at all the melodic elements of this beat, I want to show you how I process my drums using Monolith. So I went ahead and found this preset here called TR-707 Post-Punk in the drum section, and instead of using the plugin at 100%, I went ahead and took it down here to about 40%, so I could still kind of retain a bit of character from the initial drums that I laid down. And I just think that sounded best, so I'll let you hear how this sounds with Monolith on. Alright, so those drums are sounding pretty good. We only really have a bit of this crush section and reverb going on, as well as this 80s filter down here, I think is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But just for reference, I'll go ahead and show you how it sounds with Monolith off. So that's a pretty big difference between on and off, and I just love how this plugin adds a ton of character overall. So just to recap, I'll go ahead and show you how everything sounds together. So what you just heard was a quick preview of this next beat, and for this one I just use all one-shots from one of my multi-kits, and instead of recording live bass and guitar, and I just wanted to showcase how well Monolith works on one-shots too, in case you're not a guitar or a bass player. So for this time around, I think I'll show you how things sound before, and I'll put Monolith on after so you can hear the difference. But again, I just have a really basic couple layers, a bass, a low guitar, some guitar chords, and a little guitar lead, and I'll just show you how my processing works here. I have the bass and 3 guitars routed to a mix bus, and each has their own instance of Monolith on. So now that I've turned Monolith off, I'll go ahead and show you how all these guitars and basses sound by themselves. So to me, these one-shots sound kind of dull and dry and a bit lifeless, especially because they're just MIDI instead of being a live played instrument. So now that we put Monolith back on all these guitars, we can really hear the difference on how well it makes things come alive. And to me, that sounds night and day, and I really just love how much character and life it brings to one-shots like these. And next we have our drums here, so I'll go ahead and show you how all these sound without any processing on. Alright, Alright, so that sounds pretty okay so far, but I think we can go ahead and make it better. So I have all of my drums here, except my kick, routed to my drum bus, and I have Monolith on with this preset called Industrial Gates. And again, it's only at about half of the dry and wet knob down here, and I'll show you how this sounds with Monolith on. And yeah, honestly, that difference is crazy. It just sounds so much more alive and punchy. And I think the crush module down here really adds a lot of character and grittiness to it. And again, really nothing else on this mix except a stock Fruity Soft clipper on my master. So there's really nothing else going on. I mean, sure, you can go as crazy as you want, but I just thought this mix sounded good where it was. Before we move on to our third and final beat of this video, I just wanted to take a moment and pause and say thank you if you've been watching so far. And if you've been wanting to pick up a copy of Monolith for yourself, Prod Sounds has provided me with a 25% off discount code. You can use my code OLLIE25 to get 25% off your purchase, and I'll leave a link down below. Alright, let's get back into it. Okay, so you just heard a preview of our third beat here, and I went with something a bit more industrial and kind of like dark synth, dark cyberpunk, whatever you want to call this. And I have a few layers of synths here, mostly some arps and basses, but I also have some drums, and I'll go ahead and show you the synths and how I process them with Monolith on each layer. And all of my synths are coming from Analog Lab, and I have these 4 routed to my melody bus, with each layer being processed separately with Monolith. So I'll go ahead and turn these all off so you can hear how they sound with before, and then we'll compare the process result afterwards. Alright, so without Monolith, these 4 synth layers sound like this. So that sounds pretty good by itself so far, but I think we can make it a lot better with adding Monolith. So each layer is processed a little bit differently with different presets, mostly using presets from the bass section. Now when we turn Monolith back on, all our synth layers are going to sound like this. And you can hear how bright and alive everything sounds now. It just adds a lot more character and grit and some more detail in my opinion. So moving on, we got our drum section here, and as you can see, I have a good amount of layers and a few aux percussion elements, some just percussive hits and whatnot. And if we open up our mix window, we can see all the red highlighted tracks are being routed to our drum bus, with Monolith processing everything at once. Except for our kick, I usually like to keep that separate. So all my drums soloed and without Monolith on sounds like this. And so far that sounds pretty good to me with all these layers on our drums, but I think we can make it sound a little bit better, so let's go ahead and turn Monolith back on and hear the final results. Yeah, the difference on that is just night and day. That sounds awesome. So let me go back in and show you what my preset was on this. And right here in the drum section, I found this Cold Wave Machine preset, and I believe I turned down my dry wet knob down here to about 19%. I feel like having it at 100% is a little bit overkill, and sometimes it's best to blend back the dry wet knob to get a bit more subtle effect going on. But you can see with the processing on this preset, there's really nothing too much. We have this crush section with a little bit of drive and grit going on, a little bit of compression, and the era knob set to 2000s. And on top of that, let me show you what's on the master on my mix bus. So again, we just have a basic stock Fruity Soft clipper, and I actually use Monolith on the master too, just to kind of experiment around with this. So for the effect on my master bus, I just turned on the basic default section, then turned off a bunch of components, and in the era section, I have it set to the 80s preset, and I think I dialed back the input and output gain a little bit. So let's turn Monolith off, and then that'll sound like this. And when we turn Monolith back on, that sounds like this. think that makes more of a subtle difference on our mix bus, which is what I was going for, so I think that panned out well. And that brings us to the end of this video. Again, if you want to go ahead and check out Monolith for yourself, you can grab a copy with my discount code OLLIE25, the link will be down below. Thanks for tuning into this video today, and thank you to Prod.Sounds for letting me share this one with you guys.